Greetings, this is Benji Dalton. Today I wanted to do a little bit of JavaScript programming. I come from a Ruby programming background, but lately I've been doing a lot of JavaScript, and I quite like it. And so one of the things that's different about Ruby and JavaScript is coming from a Ruby background, I notice there's a lot of kind of nifty, handy, convenient methods built into the core of the language, whereas with JavaScript, not so much. And one of these methods that I'm used to having that I came across the other day was flatten. Flatten is a method where you take a nested array and flatten it down into one array. So what we'll do here is we'll make an array of numbers, and within my array I need at least one other nested array, which I'll put some more numbers in. And we'll log that out to the console so we'll get a nice before and after once we have our function, and we can see we do have an array with an array inside the array and numbers, and what we're going to try to achieve is just to return a single array with these numbers. And we'll set up a function to do that. We'll just call it flatten, which accepts an argument of an array, some kind of list, right? And we're going to return a flattened array, and I'll just set up a variable that we can use for that return there. It's just an empty array at the moment. So you might be asking yourself why we would do this, or if it would be very useful to have this function on hand. And I'll just set up a console log to invoke my flatten function here. And the answer is yes, it's very useful. I use it a lot in Ruby. Imagine a scenario, say, where you have a comment, threaded comments, and a tree of comments, and each thread is an array of comments, and you want to grab a bunch of them, say, and determine the most 50 recent comments or something. So you're gonna have arrays of comments within an array, and you're gonna need to flatten it down into one, so you can sort it by date or whatever. Notice I'm just adding a string in my original array there, because I think it's always good to have different types, just in case we do something that only works with numbers. We now have a string. So okay, so I'm going to use a for each here, because what we need to do is iterate through each of these items in the array. And syntax we use for that is we have some nice ES6 arrow syntax with an item variable. And I was thinking I'd use push, which just pushes an item into this empty flattened array I have here. So I go through the array and through each item in the array and push it into a new array. And you see it's going to return exactly what we input, because we're just reconstructing the original array. What we really need to do here is we need something that's going to kind of evaluate this item, each of these, to see if it's actually just an item or if it's an array. Okay, so actually JavaScript has something like this built in. There's a function called isArray, which we'll check and see if your item is an array or not, which is very good for us. If I can remember if it gets called on the array or if it gets called on the argument. Actually, let's just test this out in a console.log up here so we can see what we're doing. And I'll use our numbers array, and we'll test and check and see if it's an array. Let's see if this works. I think it might be the other way around, but numbers array, and we'll check to see if it's an array. And yep, that's not the way we use that. So it's actually a function on the prototype of array, and we put the array as the argument. and we see true there. So our numbers array is an array. That's sweet. Just change that back to the way it was. So this is exactly what we need. Is we need to look at this item that we're currently iterating over, and say, hey, if this item is an array, we need to do something different, and we'll do that here. Otherwise, we'll just, if it's just an item, we'll just push it back into the array. So what are we going to do? I think what we need to do is take each item from this array. So maybe I'll use map this time instead of for each. Map is very similar to for each. I won't go into the differences right now, but if we take each item in this array, nested array, and then we can push that into our flattened array like we do here, and let's change our variable so it works. And I think this is gonna work. It's not actually very pretty, but let's just try it out. And you can see it does. It's just one single array instead of a nested array, and we're just returning all our numbers there. And we got rid of that inner array. So before we celebrate though, there's a few things. I don't think this is gonna work if we have a deeply nested array. In other words, if we have another array nested within another array in our original array. So let's just take this another level deeper and try it. And as I suspected, it took out the first array but not the second array. And that's just because we basically just repeated ourselves here with this map and did the same thing we were doing with our for each, but we just went one level deeper. We didn't really solve the problem. So, and thinking about like, how can I solve this? Because there could always be another array with this array. So I need to constantly keep checking if the item is an array or not. You know, and I think the answer to that is recursion. And recursion is one of those concepts that can be a little bit scary or mind-bending the first time you kind of hear about it. But for the purposes of what we're doing, we could simply define it as we want to call our function, the flatten function, within the flatten function. So we still need to iterate through each of these items in the original array. And we'll just use map for that. And for each item, we still need to test to see if it's an array, and do something if it's an array. And what that something is going to be is we're going to actually call on our flatten function to flatten that and do it as many times as necessary. So let's set this up and I'll just show you what I'm talking about. I think I'll use the itinerary if else form here. So this is the same as the if else we were writing before, but I'm just writing it on the syntax that will let me write it on one line. So we have our item. We check to see if it's an array. If so, we'll do something. Otherwise, we'll do something else. We already know that we can use our push as our else. Actually, I think I'm going to use something that's a little bit more flexible here. I'm going to use a function called concat. So we just do our flattened array, and concat is going to basically, it's concatenating this item into it. And actually, let's just kind of have let's take a diversion here and go over what the difference is between push and concat, because I think it's kind of worth a exploration, if you will. So let's say we have an array and we concat with a single item, just a number, and you can see it just kind of does what push does. It just pushes that into there. However, what if we put a whole nother array there? Well, that actually joins the two arrays, kind of adds them together, if you will, into one single array. Now if we do push, we'll just add push with a single item here. That just returns how many items there is. It's not a very useful return, so let's give it a variable. Yeah, another reason to use concat. Kidding, but so if we just push a single item with push, we get what you'd expect, which is the item is now in the array. However, if we push another array, then we get a nested array. We've pushed the whole array into that array. And so that's the difference between these two, is push will push a nested array into there, where concat will just join those two arrays. So I think we'll go with concat in this case. It doesn't, I just did that there to demonstrate, it doesn't union them, but it does join them. If I can figure out how to exit here, we'll go back to what we're doing. But yeah, I think concat will be just a little bit more flexible for our purposes. So here we do with our if evaluation, we're gonna call flatten on the item, which is actually another nested array. And that is the recursion that I was talking about. This invokes this if it's an array, then we're gonna invoke flatten, and then it's gonna take the array back down to the individual items of that array and test each of those items and flatten them again if they are an array, and return that in the if-else evaluation here. Okay, but we'll get more into that if it actually, let's just see if this works first of all, because I have a feeling it might not. And we get an empty array as our return. And the reason that is concat is not actually a mutating function. So there's a kind of a way we can fix that just for now. We can make flattened equal the results of this if-else statement. It's just kind of a quick way to persist the changes there for concat. Now we get a different result, which is even more interesting. So we get 5, 6, 7, 8, but not the 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can see we've done away with our nested arrays here, but we've also done away with the items, you know, that were not in a nested array. And I have a feeling the reason that we've done that is because what we're doing is we're basically concatenating things just on the else and persisting that, mutating that to flattened. And the if evaluation here, that is not getting added to flattened. So it's just getting thrown away whenever the if evaluation is true. So this might be a good lesson in mutability somewhere in here, but let's not get into that. For now, I'm just gonna, to fix this, I'm gonna have my flatten concat, and is gonna concat whatever the evaluation is of this if-else statement. And you can see it works now. It's beautiful. Alright, so it is time to celebrate. But this is there's a few kind of confusing things going on here, including the reassignment of the variable. So let's go through this one point at a time. We got our flatten function. We're going to put an array as an argument into that function. Our function is going to evaluate each item and check, is this item an array? Well, this one is not an array, so that is going to get returned, and actually it's going to get concatenated into our flattened array in which we're caching this. The next item, this one, is an array, and when that gets evaluated as true, that's going to get fed into our flatten function again, and this is the recursion. So that calls flatten, invokes it with that argument, which returns an array of 2, 3, because there's no more deeply nested arrays within there. Now that array of 2, 3 gets concatenated with our flattened array, which, as we know, just joins them into a single flattened array. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. But anyways, yeah, this is I'm fairly happy with this. We can have, you know, deeply nested arrays. You know, I'll just add another array here, and then we'll, and you know, that's you can look here, the original console.log is pretty deeply nested, weird stuff going on. And actually, let me just get rid of that because it's confusing now. But we can see the result is we just get one big flattened array. Awesome, so we have totally re-implemented this flatten function that I'm used to having in Ruby here. Now there's plenty of other JavaScript kind of libraries out there, such as you know, underscore, Lodash, Sugar.js. I think all of these have a flatten function. I'm not so sure if jQuery does or not. But you know, you could get this functionality from bringing in any of those other libraries. You don't have to write it yourself. But I feel like sometimes it's worthwhile. It's fun to do that, to understand how something kind of works in concept and be able to implement it yourself, even if it is just kind of a rudimentary exercise or function like flatten. But anyways, hope you enjoyed that. If you have any comments or feedback, you know, I'm always you know, excited to learn from people that know more than me. So, you know, just be nice about it and have some empathy in your comments. And cool. Until next time.